As a young child, Edwina Adams was quiet by nature. She would whisper when speaking. In boot camp, she was thrashed for not yelling loud enough. But when she discovered her ex-husband was a con man, she started to make noise, proving you don't have to be loud to make some noise. Now Edwina's on a mission to motivate. So kick back and tune in for candid conversations with those who have harnessed the power of their voices. Let's make some noise.
Welcome to Let's Make Some Noise, where noise is my acronym for a narrative of inspiration, strength, and encouragement. And today we have Allison Ly joining us. So this is going to be really interesting. Allison empowers adults of immigrant children so that they can have the relationships they've always dreamt of with their loved ones without sacrificing their own needs and dreams by changing learned, self-limiting thoughts and beliefs. Her coaching program builds on her 6+ years as a licensed therapist and her personal journey as a daughter of immigrant parents and as a mom navigating between the sandwich generation. So welcome, Allison.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
This is going to be interesting for me to learn. I love learning about new things. And it's a conversation I haven't really had with anybody at this depth, I don't believe. So, can you tell me, what do you find is the most common self-limiting belief for children of immigrant parents? And how does that typically impact their relationships?
Yeah, so being a child of immigrant parents, from the start, there could be a lot of responsibilities that is put on the young child and then the adult. So I think a limiting belief that some of the adults carry on is that they can't really take care of their own needs, or that they have to constantly put the needs of their family members above theirs, or constantly kind of like, sacrifice their needs because their parents, their family sacrificed their own well-being, their hometown, all the things that they knew to come to a new country for the sake of the family, right? So there's sacrifice given from the parents, the family's end, and then the children who become adults recognize that. And then they also sometimes internally feel that pressure to give back, and also is sometimes told to give back and support the family. So then there's this struggle of like, when am I able to do what I want to do, have the careers I want, live where I want to live, while also giving back to my family. And that's a really big challenge that people struggle with in just figuring out like how they want to show up and what they want to do and what their values are, right? Because even just being in the middle, caught in the middle, being born in another country, and then navigating like parents' cultures, traditions, and then like trying to assimilate and trying to figure out what the culture is and where they're living now. There's so many things they have to navigate, so it's hard to always know exactly what they want and need.
So that makes sense. But many of these immigrant parents risk their lives, right? Let alone leave somewhere, maybe leave all their other family behind and just have all this emotional baggage that they're carrying with them. So what you're saying is, as the children of these parents, whether it's verbalized or just the children senses it, they feel this obligation to give back
Mm-hmm.
and not leave their parents hanging because of this sacrifice, a big sacrifice that they made. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the sacrifice and also just their well-being, right? Like for me, for example, my parents knew English, but mine was better. I went to school here, I was just more familiar with the language at an earlier age. So I helped them with paperwork. I helped them, translate. And I'm not going to like let someone like, take advantage of my parents if I see it. So even if they didn't ask me to help them, just like a lot of other adults with immigrant parents do, they will step in because they know more, or they have more resources, more access to things that could help, right? They might be more tech savvy, just more proficient in English to help out. And so sometimes it's because of the sacrifice, and sometimes it's your family. Like, you're not going to let them like,
Yeah.
get hurt by other people or whatnot.
You can't answer for everyone, but from what you know, and like in your community and knowing other families, immigrant families, is it more common than not or less common for these parents to feel really thankful that their children know more than them? in this new country? Or is it hard for them to kind of get over that and feeling like their children now have to take care of them? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think both for sure, because, of course, as the adult with the agency being the responsible parent, it's kind of hard to give away some of this power, right, to our
Yeah.
children to help us make decisions and like trust what they're saying to know that it's correct. So
Right.
I think there is some loss of power in that sense, right? And not power in like being dominant, but just kind of being the authority figure in the relationship. And that puts a lot of responsibility on the child, the young adult, too, which is a lot of pressure. And then the other piece is like they are also very grateful because, being in a new country, not having a lot of family and familiarity of the things around, it's nice to know that family is someone you can easily trust. So there is that gratefulness, but also too, depending on the communication styles, how much stressors they have, right? Like to your point too, of like moving and like if they're moving because of war, being refugees or, trying to like have a better life, they may not have all the bandwidth and time to like be like, hey, I'm so grateful for you. It might just be like, help me with
Yeah.
this, thanks, or maybe even no thanks sometimes, not on purpose, but just kind of like they're
Right.
surviving. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. They're just in survival mode still. And what we're talking about here is similar, different, but similar in like just a normal aging parent who maybe now they can't drive and they're having trouble letting go of that independence and ability. And that's hard. Like that
Hmm.
in itself is hard. So, man, when you think of that happening maybe to these immigrant parents who are in their 20s, 30s, and then living that way for decades, that must be really hard.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's like that aging process of like losing some independence or needing more support is sped up because of all the
Yeah.
cultural and language barriers.
Yeah. So another question I have is how does the sandwich generation dynamic uniquely affect individuals with immigrant parents? And what are some ways to navigate these roles while respecting both the older and younger generation?
Yeah. So the sandwich generation is when the adult is caught kind of in the middle, right? They're taking care of their elderly parents who are getting aging or might need more support. And they may also be having their family and children on in their own families. So they're literally like in the middle of caretaking for the young ones and the elders. And, how it's different for adults with immigrant parents is like, similar to the language issues, resources, or just being kind of tech savvy or being used to being the main source of support for their families or for their parents. A lot of that responsibility is still on the adult as they have children too. But, when people have kids, it's so consuming for the parents and everything is new as well. So the stressors just like double, right? Or it could, if we're not managing it and being really aware of what our bandwidth is, we can really burn out and not be cognizant of what we need to take care of ourselves. And with the pattern already of being used to, generally speaking, right? Not everyone does this, but being used to putting other people's needs or being the one that people come to for help, we're going to be helpful. And then where does the time fall for us to kind of do what we need for ourselves or our children?
Yeah.
So the layer of complexity is when there's a little bit more support or dependence or, advice that needs to be given or, wanted from the families who depend on you and trust you. And then, yeah, navigating all that time and energy, right? So we want to talk about too. I made a recent post about like the mental load. Usually they talk about that in romantic relationships, but that also happens in adults with immigrant parents where the mental load of thinking, coordinating, scheduling, making sure that they have the things they need or know how to get the things that they need, even if they're able to do it on their own. It's a lot.
Mhm. Mm. This is where something like your coaching probably helps other people, right? So you work with people who are that sandwich generation. Is that who you work with?
Yeah, so within my coaching, I take a more proactive approach, trying to give people more tools and skills ahead of time so that, I mean, it might already be happening, but we want to give them the tools before it gets to the point of like burnout and resentment. Because what I see in my therapy practice is that people have reached a point of exhaustion, right? Where they feel like the only way that they can actually take care of themselves or have some space is to cut off the people that they actually really care about, which is their family members. And that is not at
Yeah.
all their intention, but because they've burned out and not taken the steps to really set boundaries, be aware of what they need, communicate, and practice self-care, which sounds easy, but it's hard. Um, then that's when they get to the point of being like, I need to cut people out because that's the only way, but it's not the only way. So that's why I created my coaching program, to hopefully be more proactive and be more preventative before it gets to that point.
Yeah. Are you willing to share, like, what is one of the main things you teach for people? Like, if they are at that point, they're just like, oh my gosh, I can't take it anymore. I just forget y'all. I'm going to step away and just clear my head.
Mhm.
um, what do you say to those people? Like, what is the first thing they need to do?
Really validate that feeling and be nice to themselves, right? That's really the first step, because adults with immigrant parents too, generally the pattern that I see is they're really hard on themselves. Because the expectations from them since young has been very high. And they also usually, or sometimes, internalize that expectation too and have really high expectations of themselves to be able to do it all or do it on their own. So I think really validating the fact that they're aware of, wow, like I am burnt out. I need space. I need just, time for me. Like that's great. And then also like there are ways to still have the relationships that you want without feeling this way so intensely. So validating that. And one of the things that I really teach is boundaries, and boundaries are just so important. Like I love talking about
Yeah.
boundaries, and it's so, so important.
Yeah, I agree. What I'm hearing you say is letting them know it's okay that you're feeling this way and it's normal. And then walking them through that. So that's great. Reflecting on your own journey, how have you seen your relationship evolve with both your parents and as a mother yourself? And what has been the most rewarding part of this transformation?
Yeah. The most rewarding part is seeing my kid with my parents, right? And them being able to interact in a way that I don't know if I got to, like, maybe I did, maybe I
Mm,
didn't. Also, my daughter's only 3, so I may be too young I would have been too young to know. But just seeing them connect, and that I feel good about having them around, right? And not feeling resentful, not feeling like, oh, they're a burden to me or anything like that. Like that is really rewarding for me. Like trying to be as present as possible with them around, knowing that there are things I do have to help them with, read certain mail and sign up for things online, while still being able to just enjoy them with me and my family. And I forgot the first part of your question. I was too.
mhm. Yeah, just like, how have you seen your relationship evolve with your parents
Oh
as
yeah.
being a mother? So, like, so that's beautiful that you're seeing your own child interacting with your parents in a way that you don't remember that you were able to. But let's provide a scenario. You go visit your parents, and now you're a mother yourself. How has your relationship changed now that you're a mother? So, your relationship with your parents.
Yeah. What I actually have to do, and it's not that I haven't given them their agency, but I've had to be more comfortable with giving them even more agency, right? Like, hey, this is how you do it, and like let them try it more on their own. Whereas before I had more time, so maybe I'll walk them through it things more, or like I'll do it with them, or I'll take them. So, just my bandwidth of like time and energy, I've had to let them do more things on their own. And it just reminds me, which I knew all along, that they're capable of doing these things, right? With some guidance, with some support, of
Yeah.
course, or maybe not even, right? But I just feel, because it's sometimes we have to recognize, is it my own anxiety or is it actually something I need to worry about? And that's something I've really had to work on, right? This is why I work on mindset work in my coaching program, because our thoughts are so important and so powerful in dictating how we act. And in the past, I think when I was younger and had more time and felt so protective of them, I was like, let me just do it all for you, because like it's easier for me, one, and then easier in a sense of like getting it done. And also then I know for sure it's done, then I don't have to fix it later. But now that I have less bandwidth, I've had to give up some of that and still help them, but in different ways, and learn how to empower them more. And I've done that as I got older, even before I had my child. But it was something I had to let go of because I had to recognize it was my own mindset of like, oh my gosh, like they can't do this, or it's going to cause me more problems, but it's not. Like it all worked
Yeah.
out fine sometimes, right?
That's so interesting you're saying that because I think of like myself as a mother, a young mother, and having those same thoughts about my children though, thinking, just do it, it'll be faster, and I don't have to mess with this. So, since you did that with your parents and now you have this 3-year-old, do you do that with them as much or do you recognize it and be like, oh wait,
I'm
you
much
know
more
what I'm saying?
aware. Yeah, like I'm much more
Yeah.
aware of it. And as I got older too, generally it just kind of like shifted. But again, I had to be very intentional about it and like
Yeah.
breathe and just like check in with them later or do other things to make myself feel better and not feel like I'm a bad person for not helping them because I can. I think that's
Mhm.
sometimes too where like the thoughts are very powerful because a previous thought I had was I'm just lazy and I don't want to help them, right? Versus like, no, they're capable of helping themselves,
Mhm.
right? So it's like how we talk to ourselves is so important and also sometimes so subtle that can lead us to not feel good and do things that we don't really need to or want to do because we feel bad.
Yeah. You were been a therapist for 6 years as well. What was your drive to get into therapy and now coaching?
Yeah. So when I was younger, you know, given our family situation where my parents weren't as familiar with the school districts, what resources were available, like counselors and teachers were really influential in my life, where like a lot of opportunities, I had were because I was exposed to them through school. So I
Mm.
really originally wanted to like work in the school districts and give back to the community. But then, and that's where it all kind of started because I knew I just wanted to give back somehow. And once I got into undergrad, I fell in love with sociology and was like, this is what I need to do. Like just like provide
Mhm.
therapy. And I did provide, therapy and I still am to my community of people in the area that I grew up in. And I worked primarily originally with adults with children who had Vietnamese parents because I also speak Vietnamese. So it just like all fell into place where like I knew I wanted to give back and I was able to use my languages and, be supportive of my community. So it just kind of all fell into place of, yeah, trying to find ways to help people who experience similar things that I did and, just give them more tools to empower them.
That's really great. Hear that the community that was here for you as that child worked. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's everybody's story in every, community across America, but I'm glad that happened for you. Um, so this has been really good conversation, but on what is more of your family's personal journey? So you said they immigrated from Vietnam. How old were your parents when they did that? And
So my mom flew over because I think her sister was here first in the United States from Vietnam. So she came over when she was about 30, I believe. My dad actually left by boat because of the war in Vietnam. So he was a refugee in Pennsylvania, I believe, first. And somehow their family came to California and they met in California. So, and were from the same hometown, which is really
oh
interesting.
wow,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
very cool.
somehow, they met here, and yeah, so my sister and I were born here, and we grew up in the San Gabriel Valley in California, where
Mhm.
there was a lot of other. So we're actually Chu Chow, but we speak Vietnamese, so we're Chinese Vietnamese. So I'm actually
Okay.
just Chinese, but I speak Vietnamese, and there's a lot of
Oh,
Chu Chow people in the area that we grew up actually. So it was a really cool community.
okay. So I don't know if I was familiar with that term, Chu Tao,
Hmm.
and that means that you're Chinese, but you lived in Vietnam
So,
or the
so Chu
equivalent.
Chow is like a smaller, I don't know if it's a dialect only. I don't even really know,
Okay.
or ethnicity of people. So that's the language that we spoke as that Chinese people.
Oh, okay. So Chichao is the language.
Hmm.
Is that what you're saying? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Good to know. Now I'm educated on Chichao. Very cool. Thank you. Well, that's awesome. And are your parents been able to go back and visit
My sister and I
where
actually
they
took
came
them.
from?
My sister and I actually went back with our parents, with my mom, to Vietnam, I think 2 years ago. And that was the first time we went as a family. So that was really cool to see family and just see where they grew up. We got to visit like my grandparents, like graves and stuff. So it was really nice to pay respect and just see where they grew up.
Yeah. Was it very different from what they remembered?
I think everything's more modern, right? Like than they're used to. But I think for the most part, like the streets and everything and the people, I think all kind of people stayed where they were, and everything's just improved a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. You got to take them there.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now? Do you have anything upcoming for your coaching program or anything that you want to talk about?
Yeah. I'll be launching my coaching program again. We'll be open up in cohorts next year. So currently there's not much, but there's one-on-one coaching that's always available, or therapy. But for therapy, I can only work with people who live in California because that's where I'm licensed. So yeah, like not much, but I'm just trying to, get more people within the community and support my community a little bit more and see what's necessary or what's needed to kind of help them through just navigating like relationships and boundary setting.
And how would people connect with you if they wanted to get in your next program?
Yeah, they can go to my website. It's heyallisonly.com, and Allison's 2 L's and I. And the last name is Lee, but it's spelled Ly. And that's my same handle on Instagram.
Okay, and I'll make sure on the video portion of this that we'll have that text on screen, and then we'll put it in the show notes for everybody, okay? So you can easily find her website and check out her information. And just to clarify, so your coaching program, you want to say specifically like who comes into these groups?
So it's usually adults with immigrant parents, and there's sometimes moms that come in, but anyone that's wanting to like work on their relationships and feel more confident in just communicating their needs, that's something that we work on a lot. And that's why I really liked your acronym, because I really think confidence and speaking up and advocating for yourself doesn't have to be like loud. It doesn't have to be like the loudest person in the room. It doesn't have to be like that you're an extrovert or that you're always right. Like you can have this internal confidence that like you just say what you need to and you're right. And if people agree with you or not, it's all good because you've already worked through that and feel really confident in what you're saying.
Yes, I love it. You can make noise no matter how loud you are,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what you sound like.
Yeah.
For sure. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with us today?
No, I just thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, I appreciate your work and just highlighting stories, because I know, there's a lot of challenges that people experience, and it can seem like sometimes it's holding us down, but there's always a way to empower ourselves to kind of move forward in the way that we want. So thank you for having this podcast and for having me on.
Well, you're so welcome. I'm truly grateful to be able to have these conversations with people because, uh, we learn from each other, right? And I think the more we hear these stories, the better we all are and the more empowered we can all be, because you just learn something new every day and from everyone. So always be opening to learning from others, for sure. Well, thank you again for your time. And in closing, if you've followed my podcast much, you know that if you're ready to take your adversity and turn it into something big, just to build something out of that adversity, I'm what's called an adversity architect. I can help you do that. So give you a blueprint to use that adversity and build the life or business that you're wanting to do. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, Edwina.
Hey, thank you for listening. Two things. If today's episode brought you inspiration, strength, or a new perspective, I would be so appreciative if you subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback helps me keep bringing stories and insights that matter most to you. And second of all, to stay connected or engage with the community, go to edwinaadams.com/links. That's LINKS. And remember, you're one step closer to building beyond your adversity and crafting a life of impact and purpose. Keep making noise, and we'll see you on the next episode.